This is a Christian Borman production. So, the question is, should voter IDs be required in all states strictly? The answer to that question is a definite yes. Over 30 states require some sort of ID, and 18 of those states require photo ID strictly, or you're not allowed to vote. This is an example of a photo ID. Just a driver's license will do, and it's pivotal for every election. Although that sounds great, 17 of those states do not require any sort of ID at all, leaving anybody to do anything at the polls. Examples of states that don't require any ID include California, Maryland, and Maine, to name a few. Last year, 1.2 million Texans didn't have the correct ID in order to vote, so they were either sent home or just given a different ballot in order so their vote really didn't matter too much. That combined with the 300,000 people who didn't have ID in Wisconsin and the 400,000 people that didn't have ID in Pennsylvania, that equals almost 2 million people in just those three states that weren't allowed to vote because they didn't have the correct ID. Some states are strict states and some are unstrict states. But what's the difference between the two? Well, strict states require ID, most of the time being photo ID, and if you do not have the correct ID, you have to fill out a provisional ballot, or you just go home and you don't vote. Unstrict states still recommend you bring your ID, but if you don't, it's not too big of a deal. You're let into the polls without any real penalty, and you're allowed to vote just like anybody else would. That's all great and good, but why is it important to have voter ID? That's next. Voter ID can be important for many reasons, but one of the most important reasons is to prevent voter fraud. Voter fraud is when somebody votes for somebody else, or votes for somebody who isn't actually alive, or votes twice for themselves, and it's very illegal. People are under the assumption that, well, it only happens over the average everyday citizen that goes to the polls every year, goes home, and they might throw in an extra vote or two. Well, that's what there have been multiple cases of congressmen and congresswomen doing such that, pressing each other's buttons twice, or pressing each other's buttons before them, so they can vote for the person that maybe somebody else wants to vote for. It is completely and 100% illegal, and really, it should be stopped. People who do not have voter ID should not be allowed to vote, and that's that. Period. No provisional, nothing. They are sent home, and they should not be able to vote until they get the proper licensing and ID, because it could tear this country apart. If one person votes for you and you don't get that vote, and then you go to vote, and somebody says to you, "Hey, well, you already voted." Well, that's your vote down the drain. Think about it this way: maybe 1 or 2 votes isn't enough to really tilt any sort of election anywhere, really. But if it comes up to 10, 100, 1,000, and then it gets up to 100,000, a million maybe, you keep going, that is enough to tilt an election. And not only is it wrong, it's illegal as well. For example, people are still complaining about how Trump won the presidency. They're saying that, oh, well, the Russians got involved with it. Well, who would have known? See, they could have just walked through the doors of one of the polls and simply voted as many times as they wanted. There's not enough crackdown on people that do not have IDs, and that's a problem. It is very illegal to vote more than once. People can vote twice, 3 times, or even for somebody they do not even know, and it is a huge problem that could tear this country apart. At the end of the day, there really is no telling to how that election went down. There was so much revolving around it, and there was so much turmoil that nobody really knows. Were the Russians involved? Was there voter fraud? I think the answer is yes. Why, you say? It's so too easy for anybody to get into the polls. People are just let in. They can just walk in, vote, walk out. It's so way too easy. And part of that reason is voter IDs really aren't used to the best of their abilities. What they're supposed to be used for is to get people to only vote once, and for people who've already voted, kick them out. Don't let them vote again. That is illegal. Everybody has the right to one vote each, and that's how it always should be. There should be no way around that. There should only be one vote per person, and people are taking that ability for granted and voting once, twice, 3 times, and it's getting ridiculous. So, for those 17 states that do not have any precaution whatsoever when it comes to voter IDs, they're in trouble. And unfortunately, one of those states includes Maryland. In the 2016 presidential election, over 60% of Marylanders voted for Hillary Clinton, and about 33% of Marylanders voted for Donald Trump. But who's to say that some people didn't vote twice, maybe even 3 times? And that's all because voter IDs are so slacked off, and people really don't care about them too much in Maryland. And the question is, why? The main reason why people really don't care about voter IDs too much is because they think, well, what difference is my vote going to make? What difference is a few extra votes going to make? And if everybody thinks that, if hundreds of thousands of people think that, then it does end up making a difference. So that what starts out as 1 or 2 people can really go out to a wide scale of people and end up being a really big problem. In conclusion, voter IDs are incredibly important for every state. Not just the 17 I already mentioned, but every single state should have laws requiring people to have voter IDs. It is pivotal for every election. People can walk in and vote whenever they want, and many times they want, in those states that do not require them. But in those states that do, they probably don't have that much trouble. So that is my outlook on voter IDs, and I think they are incredibly important.